The courtroom fell silent as Judge John Roberts leaned forward, eyes cold and calculating. "Mr. Musk," he said, his voice dripping with condescension, "this court does not tolerate arrogance, especially not from a witness." Elon Musk didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled. What happened next would leave everyone, especially the judge, in stunned silence. In a high-stakes federal trial that had the entire nation watching, tech titan Elon Musk found himself at the center of an explosive legal battle. Accused of gross negligence, manipulation of financial data, and violations of federal safety protocols, many believe this could be the end of Musk's empire. But what no one expected, not even the presiding judge, was that Musk had no intention of hiring a legal team. He would represent himself, and that decision would ignite one of the most shocking courtroom dramas in modern American history. The courtroom was packed, buzzing with a tense anticipation that gripped even the most seasoned legal observers. The trial of Elon Musk versus the United States of America had been labeled the trial of the decade, and it hadn't even started yet. Cameras were barred from the courtroom, but that only heightened the mystique. Reporters scribbled furiously. Legal aides whispered. Security stood tight at every corner. At precisely 9 a.m., the massive oak doors swung open, and in walked Judge John Roberts. Though better known for his Supreme Court work, Roberts had been appointed to preside over this federal case due to its complexity and national interest. A calculated choice, a power move in itself. The government wanted control, and Roberts was their man. With his robe flowing behind him and eyes as sharp as daggers, he stepped onto the bench and surveyed the room like a general before battle. He didn't smile. He didn't blink. He simply said, "Court is now in session." And the weight of those words landed with a thud in every chest. Then came Elon Musk. No entourage, no legal team, just him. Wearing a plain black suit, his expression unreadable. He walked to the defense table and sat down calmly, flipping open a leather binder. Murmurs broke out. Cameras clicked outside the courtroom. Even the prosecution, a team of 5 government-hardened litigators, glanced at each other, momentarily thrown off. Judge Roberts squinted. "Mr. Musk," he said, pausing deliberately, "I've been informed that you've declined to retain legal counsel and will be representing yourself in these proceedings. Is that accurate?" Musk looked up. "It is, Your Honor." A moment of silence. Then, the judge leaned forward, elbows resting on the bench. His voice, though measured, had the unmistakable undertone of disdain. "Do you have any formal legal training, Mr. Musk?" "No, Your Honor," Musk replied evenly. "You understand the magnitude of this case? The consequences if you're found guilty?" "I do." "And you still believe it wise to stand alone against the full weight of the United States government?" Musk didn't smile, but there was something in his eyes. Confidence, not arrogance. "I don't believe I'm standing alone. I believe I'm standing with the truth." There it was. The room reacted like a circuit had just sparked. Even Judge Roberts seemed taken aback, but only for a second. His jaw stiffened. "This is a court of law, not a TED Talk, Mr. Musk," Roberts snapped. "If you wish to indulge in theatrics, I suggest a different venue. In this courtroom, you will follow procedure. Is that understood?" "Perfectly," Musk said, still calm. The judge banged his gavel. "Then let's begin." The prosecution launched its opening statement. A carefully coordinated attack highlighting alleged safety violations in Tesla's autonomous driving program, insider manipulation of Tesla stock, and supposed suppression of whistleblower complaints. Charts were shown, timelines laid out, technical jargon weaponized into accusations. But what stood out wasn't the prosecution's thoroughness. It was the way Judge Roberts treated Musk during it all. Every time Musk tried to object to a statement, Roberts interrupted him. "Overruled. Not the proper time. Stick to the process, Mr. Musk." It was subtle, but intentional. Roberts was sending a message. You are not in control here. When it was Musk's turn to give an opening statement, Roberts gave him exactly 5 minutes. Be concise, he ordered, cutting Musk off before he could even complete his second paragraph. The public couldn't hear the audio, but transcripts later revealed the tone. Clipped, patronizing, dismissive. One moment stood out. As Musk referenced a technical report he intended to use in his defense, Roberts raised an eyebrow and said, "Unless you plan to teach yourself evidentiary law mid-trial, Mr. Musk, I suggest you refrain from referencing documents you may not know how to properly introduce." The prosecution chuckled. So did the jury slightly. Musk simply turned the page in his binder. He didn't react. But everyone noticed. The power play was clear. Judge Roberts was using every trick in the book to put Musk in a box. Discredit him, fluster him, make him look like a reckless billionaire playing lawyer for attention. And Musk? He was giving Roberts just enough rope to pull tight. The gallery buzzed during recess. He's going to get crushed, some whispered. This judge hates him. Others wondered if Musk had made the biggest mistake of his life. But behind Musk's still exterior was a mind moving at warp speed. He wasn't trying to win the courtroom on day one. He was letting Judge Roberts believe he held the reins. Letting the prosecution gloat. Letting the press frame the story. Because when you're building something, whether it's a rocket, a car, or a courtroom defense, foundation matters most. And Musk knew his was already forming, brick by quiet brick. By the end of the day, the judge had made himself the dominant figure in the room. The media painted him as the no-nonsense veteran, reigning in a rogue billionaire. But they hadn't seen the blueprint Musk was working from. They hadn't seen what was coming next. Day 2 of the trial began with the kind of quiet tension that clings to a room before a storm. The courtroom filled early. Reporters elbowing for front-row seats, analysts whispering predictions. Most believed Elon Musk had already lost control of his case. Judge Roberts had outmaneuvered him, diminished him, and forced him to look like a reckless amateur. But Musk wasn't rattled. He walked into the courtroom like a man arriving at a meeting he'd scheduled weeks ago. No flurry of papers, no sweat on his brow. Just a sleek binder tucked under his arm, and that same unreadable expression. The prosecution was up first, calling their star witness. Director Samuel Hart, a top official from the Department of Transportation. Hart was sharp, rehearsed, and armed with government reports and memoranda. He painted a damning picture. That Musk had ignored federal safety warnings about Tesla's self-driving software, manipulated data in quarterly safety reports, and used his social media influence to mislead investors and the public. His testimony was clear, confident, and seemingly airtight. Judge Roberts looked pleased. Then came the cross-examination. Elon Musk stood slowly. He didn't approach the witness stand like a lawyer. He approached it like an engineer inspecting a machine. Calm, methodical, precise. "Mr. Hart," Musk began, "you mentioned earlier that the DOT issued 3 formal warnings to Tesla regarding its autonomous systems. Do you recall the dates of those warnings?" "Yes," Hart said confidently. "May 12th, July 6th, and September 21st of last year." Musk nodded. "I'd like to direct your attention to Exhibit 7B. It's a memorandum from your department's Internal Risk Review Board dated April 22nd, 3 weeks before the first warning. Please read the highlighted section aloud." Hart hesitated, scanning the document. It says, "As of April 22nd, no significant federal safety violations have been observed in Tesla's software update 10.3. "Correct," Musk said, stepping toward the jury. "So, your department internally cleared the update before issuing the first public warning?" Hart shifted uncomfortably. "That was a preliminary review. Things changed, did they?" "Let's look at Exhibit 9. Musk flipped the page with surgical precision. "This is a third-party data log submitted to the NHTSA, showing a crash event that was attributed to Tesla software. According to the log, the vehicle in question was using software version 9.2, not the version under investigation. Is that correct? Hart frowned. That's what the log suggests, yes. So, the incident your department cited to trigger the warning wasn't caused by the update in question? I'd have to review that in more detail. Musk didn't press. He let the silence stretch, letting the jury digest what had just happened. A subtle crack in the government's armor had appeared, and he had tapped it gently. Not to destroy it yet, but to make sure everyone saw it. He continued, volleying questions about vehicle telemetry, software patch notes, internal emails. Each piece pulled from his binder like ammunition. It became clear he wasn't just defending himself. He had studied the prosecution's evidence more thoroughly than they had. His technical precision exposed gaps, contradictions, and generalizations in Hart's testimony. Judge Roberts interrupted a few times, but even he seemed uncertain now. Musk wasn't grandstanding. He wasn't rambling. He was constructing a logic chain in real time. And the links were holding. Then came the final blow. "Mr. Hart," Musk said, his voice steady, "do you recall sending an internal memo on July 3rd that said, and I quote, 'Political pressure may demand that we take a firmer stance on Tesla regardless of technical review results?'" Hart blinked. "I don't recall that specific memo." "Exhibit 12, Musk said, sliding a copy across the table. "Would you like to refresh your memory?" Hart took the document, read it, and visibly paled. It was his email. His words. Musk let the silence hang again. The courtroom shifted. The gallery leaned forward. The jury exchanged glances. Even the prosecution looked shaken. "Thank you," Musk said, returning to his seat without another word. The murmurs began almost immediately. Reporters furiously typed. One of the government attorneys stood to object, too late. The damage was done. And for the first time, Judge Roberts didn't speak. He simply looked at Musk with an expression that bordered on disbelief. He hadn't expected this. He had tried to make Musk look like a fool. But now the jury had watched that same man disassemble the prosecution's star witness like a machine he'd built himself. With every precise question, Musk had drawn blood. Not with bluster, but with brilliance. The judge leaned back in his chair. He said nothing, but his silence said everything. By the third day of the trial, the media narrative had shifted dramatically. Headlines that once mocked Musk for his arrogance now used terms like strategic, formidable, and even genius. Legal analysts debated not whether Musk could win, but whether the prosecution had grossly underestimated him. The courtroom gallery filled faster than ever before, and a growing crowd gathered outside the courthouse daily, waiting for updates. Inside the courtroom, something more subtle was happening. Something far more dangerous for the government's case. Judge Roberts was beginning to unravel. At first, it was just tension. He interrupted Musk more frequently. He raised his voice. He demanded that Musk stick to the facts, even when Musk was quoting those very facts. But it wasn't just procedural. It was personal. Everyone in the room could feel it. The once composed, authoritative judge was growing visibly irritated. Elon Musk wasn't just surviving. He was thriving. And Roberts hated it. That morning, the prosecution presented a key piece of digital evidence. An internal Slack message from a Tesla safety engineer, suggesting that the company had failed to disclose a batch of problematic test data. The message had been carefully framed as a smoking gun. Judge Roberts leaned in. "Mr. Musk, do you have any objections to the inclusion of this document into evidence?" "I do," Musk replied, standing calmly. "This message has been selectively extracted and is taken out of context. I have the full thread." The courtroom tensed. Roberts sighed audibly. "Mr. Musk, you are not a licensed attorney. Your objection must cite legal grounds." "It does," Musk said, flipping open a folder. Rule 106 of the Federal Rules of Evidence, Doctrine of Completeness. When a writing or recorded statement is introduced, any other part of that writing which in fairness ought to be considered can be introduced at that time. Roberts blinked. There was no denying Musk was right. Still, he hesitated. Then, fine. Submit your version for the record. We'll proceed. Musk handed the full slack thread to the bailiff. The judge read through it in silence. The courtroom held its breath. The full thread revealed that the problematic test data had already been flagged, reviewed, and resolved before the safety engineer's message. It wasn't a confession. It was a routine part of Tesla's internal debugging workflow. The original snippet, intentionally or not, had been weaponized by the prosecution. Judge Roberts didn't apologize. He simply said, "Noted." But the damage to the prosecution's credibility was already done. And worse, for Roberts, he had been forced to concede a legal point to Musk. In open court, that's when it began to spiral. Over the next 2 hours, Roberts interrupted Musk nearly a dozen times. He warned him for grandstanding, accused him of blurring the line between argument and examination, and even threatened to hold him in contempt for disrupting courtroom decorum. But Musk never raised his voice, never took the bait. Instead, he used each interruption to draw attention to the judge's hostility. "I understand, Your Honor," Musk said after one particularly aggressive outburst. "I'm just trying to ensure the jury sees the complete picture." Assuming that's still permitted in this courtroom. The prosecution objected immediately. Roberts sustained it, slamming his gavel. "One more sarcastic remark, Mr. Musk, and I will find you in contempt." But the damage was already done. Several jurors exchanged looks. The gallery shifted uncomfortably. Even the prosecution began to fidget, clearly sensing the optics turning against them. Then Musk made his boldest move yet. At the end of the day's session, he filed a motion to suppress the government's digital evidence altogether, arguing that the selective presentation of internal communications constituted a pattern of misleading conduct. He cited case law, pointed to 3 examples in the trial record, and submitted a formal request to have the evidence stricken from the record. Judge Roberts stared at him. "You're not seriously attempting to litigate this on procedural grounds, Mr. Musk?" "I am," Musk replied, "and the precedent supports it." Roberts gritted his teeth. He called a recess. When court resumed, Roberts, visibly tense, issued his ruling. After reviewing the motion and relevant case law, the court grants Mr. Musk's request. The disputed evidence is suppressed. The courtroom exploded in murmurs. The press outside went wild. It was a stunning development. Elon Musk, the self-represented defendant, had just succeeded in suppressing a critical piece of government evidence. And not because of a technicality, because the law was on his side. Judge Roberts stared straight ahead. His jaw was clenched so tightly it looked like he might crack a tooth. Musk, as always, simply returned to his seat. The shift was complete. The man who had once been mocked for his hubris now had the judge on edge, the jury leaning in his favor, and the prosecution visibly scrambling to regroup. It was no longer Musk who looked out of place in that courtroom. It was Judge Roberts. The courtroom was restless. The air buzzed with unease, as though everyone present could feel that something bigger was coming. Something no one had quite prepared for. Judge Roberts had granted Musk's motion to suppress the government's most significant piece of evidence the previous day. A decision that, although grounded in law, had shaken the foundations of the prosecution's case. But no one was ready for what Elon Musk was about to do next. As court resumed, Judge Roberts looked more guarded than before. Gone was the air of arrogant control he had flaunted on day one. In its place was a quieter, more cautious demeanor. He wasn't rattled, but he wasn't in charge anymore. Not fully. The prosecution scrambled to regain their footing, calling a financial auditor to the stand to testify on Tesla's stock activity. They hoped to catch Musk off guard with complex numbers and public filings. But when Musk stood to cross-examine, he didn't attack the witness. He attacked the entire framework of the narrative. "Mr. Lambert," Musk said coolly, "you're aware of Tesla's Q2 earnings call in which I disclosed production numbers for the Fremont factory?" "Yes," the witness replied. "It was part of the public record. And do you agree that these numbers match the financial filings submitted to the SEC?" "Well, yes." "Then would you agree that the core data underpinning your testimony is already disclosed, verified, and reconciled?" Lambert hesitated. "The issue isn't the accuracy, it's how the disclosure was timed." "Let me help you with that," Musk said, pulling up Exhibit 21, an internal calendar from the SEC itself. "You testified that the disclosure came before the blackout period, which was your claim of impropriety. But according to your own agency's internal documentation, the blackout hadn't begun. So, would you like to correct your statement?" The witness looked toward the prosecution, then back at Musk. "Yes, I misspoke." Musk turned to the jury. "You're going to see a pattern here." And then he struck. "I'd like to introduce Defense Exhibit 33, Musk said, lifting a thick folder. "A consolidated collection of internal emails, whistleblower communications, and unredacted reports from the Department of Transportation, the SEC, and NHTSA, collected over the past 6 months by independent investigators." Judge Roberts sat upright. "Mr. Musk, this is the first I'm hearing of this evidence. I submitted the motion to introduce new evidence under Rule 902, Musk said, placing the motion on the clerk's desk. The prosecution was copied. They acknowledged receipt at 5:17 a.m. today. The government attorney jumped up. "Your Honor, this is outrageous. We haven't reviewed this material, and it's being sprung on us mid-trial." Roberts narrowed his eyes. "Is that true, Mr. Musk?" "Check the timestamp," Musk said, calm as ever. The judge read the motion. The signature and receipt were there. So was the evidence list, hundreds of pages, legally obtained, verified, time-stamped. "You may proceed," Roberts said, though uneasily. What followed was a surgical dissection of the government's entire case. Musk began to present email after email, each more damning than the last. One from a federal safety official admitted the agency was under public pressure to act decisively against Musk. Another suggested deliberately vague language should be used to imply violations without risking direct legal accountability. Then came the whistleblower testimony, statements from insiders who had worked within regulatory bodies. They described mismanagement, politically motivated targeting, and internal memos labeling Musk a PR threat. "This wasn't about safety," Musk told the jury. "It was about headlines." The gallery was dead silent. Judge Roberts looked stunned, not because he hadn't seen cases fall apart before, but because this wasn't a defense. This was an offensive. Musk wasn't just proving his innocence. He was exposing a broken system. The most devastating moment came when Musk displayed a digital timeline connecting the dots between regulatory investigations and Tesla's surges in stock value. It showed clear, coordinated government pressure appearing every time the company gained significant public traction. Then, highlighted in red, was a directive from a White House liaison suggesting Musk had become too influential to ignore. It landed like a bomb. The prosecution tried to object. Roberts overruled them. "I've seen enough," he said, his voice low. "Continue, Mr. Musk." Musk's voice never rose. His hands never trembled. He didn't pace or gesticulate or shout. He simply presented the facts, the evidence, and the logic with the confidence of someone who had known the truth from the beginning and had been waiting for the right moment to lay it bare. When he finally finished, there was no applause, no gasps, just silence, the kind that follows a revelation. Even Judge Roberts remained still, his hand resting on his gavel, but not moving to use it. He looked at Musk, and for the first time, there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before: respect. In that moment, everyone realized something extraordinary. Elon Musk hadn't come to court to win. He had come to teach. By the final day of the trial, the atmosphere in the courtroom had transformed into something surreal. Once a gallery of skeptics and critics, the audience now sat in tense, reverent silence. Every eye glued to the man who had walked in alone and torn apart a legal machine designed to bury him. Elon Musk had become more than a defendant. He was a symbol of resistance, a man who had taken on an institution not with wealth or power, but with knowledge, logic, and iron control. Judge John Roberts looked exhausted, not physically, but intellectually. For days, he had tried to maintain control, tried to keep the courtroom his domain. But now, there was no doubt who the courtroom belonged to. Still, the judge had one card left: closing remarks and the final jury instructions. And if there was a moment to steer the narrative back into his grip, this was it. At 10 a.m., he began. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Judge Roberts said, his voice even, "you've heard extensive testimony, reviewed a vast amount of evidence. What's at stake here is not only the truth of one man's actions, but the trust the public places in institutions to hold power accountable." He paused. Then he turned to Elon Musk. "And yet," he said slowly, "what we've also seen here is a masterclass in preparation, in the value of knowing your facts, and perhaps in the danger of presuming someone's ignorance because of their title, or lack thereof." That wasn't in his prepared notes. That was personal. The courtroom shifted. Musk simply nodded. The prosecution gave their closing arguments. They were polished, professional, and completely overshadowed. They spoke of duty, of the importance of regulation, of protecting the public. But it all sounded hollow now. The jury had already seen the truth. The public had already decided. Then Musk rose for his closing. "No one is above the law," he began. "Not billionaires, not CEOs, not even me." He let that land. "But neither are institutions, neither are prosecutors, agencies, or the political agendas that sometimes drive them. This courtroom wasn't just about defending myself. It was about defending the idea that truth matters more than power." He walked slowly, stopping in front of the jury. "I was told I'd be crushed here, that I'd drown in procedures and be humiliated by people with decades of courtroom experience. And maybe I should have been, but I believed something stronger than fear or legal muscle. I believed in facts, in documentation, in transparency." He picked up a thick folder, his original binder. "This," he said, holding it up, "is what stood between me and prison. Not a $1 million defense team, not a political favor, just truth, organized, precise, and undeniable." The courtroom was so quiet you could hear someone breathing 3 rows back. Musk continued, "If I win this case, it won't be because I'm a genius. It'll be because I took the time to learn the system designed to judge me. And I ask you to consider, not just what I did or didn't do, but what the government did to try and stop me. And why." He turned to Judge Roberts. "Thank you for the opportunity to present my case, Your Honor." It wasn't sarcastic. It was sincere. And Judge Roberts, for once, didn't respond with control or criticism. He simply nodded. The jury left to deliberate. Outside, the press circled like hawks. Every news channel had gone live. Experts debated whether Musk had pulled off the most shocking self-defense in modern courtroom history. Inside, tension held the courtroom hostage. 2 hours passed. Then 3. Then the door opened. The jury was ready. Everyone stood. The foreman handed the verdict to the clerk, who passed it to Judge Roberts. He read it silently, then cleared his throat. In the matter of the United States versus Elon Musk, on all counts, insider manipulation, regulatory evasion, and suppression of whistleblower claims, we find the defendant not guilty. Gasps echoed. The room held its breath. Judge Roberts tapped his gavel once. This court finds the defendant cleared of all charges. Mr. Musk, you are free to go. There was no cheering, no applause, just awe. Then Roberts spoke again, this time looking not at the jury, not at the prosecution, but directly at Musk. Mr. Musk, he said slowly, it is the position of this court that you were underestimated, not just by the prosecution, but by this bench, by me. I attempted, at the beginning of this trial, to intimidate you. I assumed you were a man playing a dangerous game outside your depth. I was wrong. The courtroom froze. You have demonstrated something that deserves more than a legal victory, Roberts continued. You've reminded us all that truth, when wielded correctly, doesn't require a degree. Just discipline, clarity, and the courage to stand alone. He paused. This verdict is yours. You earned it. And in this courtroom, you set the standard. Musk nodded once. Then he closed his binder and walked out. No celebration, no entourage, just a man who came to face judgment and left having judged the system itself.